If you want to learn about the secrets of the NYPD as far as de-escalation goes, I've got a great guest today. His name's Artie Mark, and he will be sharing some of his principles of conflict communications and how to talk a rabid dog out of the back of a meat truck. So more on that in a second. Hello, everyone. As you know, this is Craig Gray. You are on the PeaceWalker podcast. We are on episode 251. And today I've got a special guest, Artie Mark, with us, and he is going to share a lot of the secrets that he developed over the years, being an NYPD for over 20 years. And I won't steal his thunder. He's got a lot to share. Artie and I go back a little ways, so we've got a lot to talk about. Artie was also involved in the 9/11 terrorist attack in New York City. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit. But a lot of really good insights for your protectors out there who, whether they're civilian, military, police, security personnel, doesn't matter, because we're all humans and we've got to deal with conflict sometimes. And speaking of that, before I get going with Artie, if you want to be a part of this community, you can become part of our free network, which is PeaceWalker Connect. And if you go to peacewalker.mn.co, again, that's peacewalker.mn.co, you can set up a profile and get in our community, access some of our free resources or free trainings and coaching, and connect with a lot of the members that are on that resource already. It is a private group. We're not on Facebook or anything like that, so you don't have to worry about big tech peeking in and on your stuff and or shutting us down because we're talking about stuff that isn't always politically correct. But it's a great group of folks if you want to learn how to live this protected lifestyle and sustain it. So get on it, peacewalker.mn.co. All right, without further ado, I'm gonna get Artie on here. So first off, Artie, I just want to thank you, man, for coming aboard. It's been a while since I've seen you like live in person,
Yeah, yeah, thanks. It's my pleasure. Yeah,
but
it's been a while.
yeah, it has been a while. We talk on the phone once in a while, and via
Yeah,
Facebook and all the usual methods of communication nowadays. But we
yeah,
haven't gotten together to train in a while, and I miss that. But let
yeah.
me introduce you proper, and then you can fill in any of the details. So,
All right.
Artie Mark was born in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in Staten Island. He spent 2 years at the State University of New York College at Cortland, and in 1991 he entered the New York City Police Department, where he retired as a detective after 21 years of service. And he did that, holy cow, it was 2012?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
fuck.
yeah,
It's been a while. He served many of those years in the NYPD Elite Crime Unit and was first responder at the terrorist attack in the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. He's also an avid martial artist and has been training for over 45 years and owns and operates a karate school in St. Augustine, Florida, where he lives with his wife and two kids and four cats. Holy cow, four cats, man.
yeah.
So, anything else to fill
That's
out?
it.
Your bio could go on for days, and
Yeah. So in what's it, 6 more days, we'll make 13 years retired.
that is just crazy. I would have
It
thought
goes fast. It's
like I
crazy.
know it was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but I mean we were in COVID 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah,
I can't believe that
it's
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 been.
insane how fast it goes, right?
Holy cow.
Yeah. So yeah, I did as you were saying, I was in college in my after completing my second year. It's when the NYPD called me because I had taken the test, and back then they weren't hiring cops. It was like a freeze. So all of a sudden, 1990 and 91 came. They were the two most murderous years in the history of New York City.
Wow.
The year that I became a cop, we had 2,300 homicides in one year.
How many?
2,300 in New York City in one year in
Do that math. Like
1991.
how many every
It's
day
like,
there's like, three murders.
yeah, no, it's like 6.3.
Oh, jeez. See, I'm not a
It's
math
crazy.
professional. That is just,
Hmm.
dude.
Yeah. See,
So
at least I, for those 2 years I was there, like, see, I took math.
I need a calculator. Um, let's back up a minute though too, because I know your dad was a cop as well, right? He was
Yes.
a New York cop.
Yeah, my dad was a cop. He came on in 1958.
Holy cow. So he saw a
Yeah.
lot of like the race riots and
Oh, yeah. He
segregation.
worked, he graduated, and he even worked years later in the same unit as, Frank Serpico.
Right, right.
So, I
That's
mean, my dad was in Manhattan off plain clothes, which basically was like public morals division where they did, you know, gambling,
all
prostitution,
right.
all vice related crimes, right? Narcotics. So yeah, so he was around in those days when it was probably pretty crazy too.
So when you were a kid, were you like, yeah, I want to be a officer like my dad, or I
Yeah.
mean, you're
Yeah, for me, it was like whenever my dad, I'd see him with his friends, they were different than other people that I saw with their
sure.
friends. Like other parents, like in my friend, let's say I was at my friend's house and his dad was whatever, it could be anything, an accountant. And he'd be with his circle of friends, and just the conversations weren't the same. I
I
used to sit in
bet.
the living room and say, man, these guys know something that I want to do this. And I think that always was in the back of my head and helped me to make that decision.
Well, I know because
That
sometimes
that
kids go either way. I mean, I know folks who, their dad or mom was an officer, and
mhm,
they're like, no way. I don't
yeah,
want that.
right.
There's
Oh
other
no,
folks,
absolutely.
and there's other folks like you, who are multi-generational officers, and I think
Hmm.
that's the best thing since sliced bread. I mean, well, you and I know Mitch Little, who was the
Oh,
police
sure, of
who
course,
was the
yeah,
police chief
yeah,
out in Tom's River, and his dad was the police
yeah,
chief in Tom's River.
yeah,
And he's a police chief.
yeah,
Well, he was, anyways. He retired, but
yeah,
so it's cool that a lot of kids want to follow in their footsteps of their folks, but
yeah. Oh, and believe me, I was the black sheep for it. Like my
oh, really?
brother's the CPA, and my mom wanted no part of me doing police work.
Well, I bet
I was
that's a
gonna
hard
I
that's a
was gonna
hard
go to
life to follow.
college. Yeah, I was gonna be a doctor, go to college. That was her plan for me. So that didn't work
Um,
out quite right.
so was your grandfather wasn't a cop too, was he?
No, no,
No.
it started with my dad.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, yeah, no, no. Both my grandparents, none of them were cops. Yeah.
So when did you get, I mean, you've been training in martial arts for a long time too, so you must have started martial arts when you were a kid.
Yeah, I started when I was 10 years old in 1980. I started at Tokyo Karate and Judo, and it was with then Shihan Tamon Kashimoto.
Hashimoto.
He was like the first Japanese teacher to come to New York City in the 60s and for karate. There was judo already. One guy was teaching judo, but Kashimoto was like the first karate guy, and he brought the old Japan with him. So it
I'm
was
laughing because I'm like, that had to have been
yeah.
freaking brutal.
Oh, it was brutal. I laugh all the time when I think about some of the things I witnessed all through those years in karate growing up as a kid. Like when I was 10, it wasn't so bad because I was still like a little kid. By the way, he was great with kids,
Right.
but he was very strict. But by the time I hit 13, I mean, if he even caught you yawning in class, you were getting cracked in the back of the head with a shinai, like the wooden bamboo sword. I mean, hard. It wasn't like a little. He would smack you and say and yell at you. He wouldn't yell. He would just be like, "Hulk again," and you kicked out. That's what he
I
would
had a
say, and
similar
he meant it.
experience with my Korean, my
Yeah,
Korean instructors is straight from, they look like the Korean Yakuza, they're master
yeah,
O's. And I started martial
mm,
arts too when I was a kid. My dad was a Marine and he was martial artist in
yeah.
Okinawa. He trained in
Oh,
Okinawa and then he came over here.
yeah,
My cousin had a whole chain of martial arts studios, also Okinawan.
mm, wow,
And so I started like when I was six, and then back, and you know this too. Back in our
yeah,
day, you didn't have kids classes. You
yeah.
either
No,
hung out
right.
with the adults or you didn't go.
That's right. The kids
So
weren't separated, really.
yeah, it's crazy. And I know when I started into like a regular school after training with my dad for several years in the basement, I
Hmm.
was a little bigger for my age. And, I
Yeah.
trained with this guy named Master O when I was a teenager. And if you were late
Hmm.
like 1 second to the warm-ups, he had what was called the rack. and it was this rack that you did the splits on, right? So you had a pad
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on
I
each,
still have one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, a pad on each foot, and then it was on
Yep.
wheels, and then so you were doing the splits for like 20 minutes for the whole
Oh
work,
yeah.
and he'd come in around the Shanai, probably borrowed from your sensei, and and he would whack you if you even like, and it's like, no, down more, you know.
Yeah. We had the wheel that you turn this way, right?
No, this
And
one
then the
was it
legs
had
go
like
open.
a little rail that you held on to,
Oh,
and
okay.
then the pads on your feet were on wheels on this track.
Okay.
And so your body
Yeah.
weight kind of lowered you down. It was brutal,
We
man.
still, so I still use it, and we actually do call it the torture rack. We still call it that. I swear. My parents crack up. They love it. And by the way, I still teach that way with the kids and the adults together.
Yep,
Kids,
so do I.
teens, and adults. I do one class, 5:30 to 6:30, and for that hour we go really hard, and kids and adults can train together. And the good thing about that, I think the kids develop so much faster because you could take a 6 or 7 year old and put him with a 10-year old, and you have that 6 or 7 year old do all the attacking while the 10-year old just kind of escape and not really hit him back who's going to hurt the six
Yep,
year old. But it allows the 6 year old to go 100% because he's not going to hurt that 10-year old.
right. Well, it's a mentor.
So,
It's good for the 10-year-olds too. It's because,
yep,
like when I was a kid too, I hung out with adults.
yeah,
And we had only a few kids in class, and we hung out with the adults, so you had to act like an adult. You
yep.
really couldn't. Well, I mean, we lollygagged around a bit like kids will, but really, we kind of had to step up our game to get along with the adults and work with the adults and aspire to that. And I don't know. I can see pros and cons to both. I mean, there's some really good schools out there that only have kids
Yeah.
classes and they're structured every few years, and I think that's great too. Just not my thing. So
Hmm.
I think
Well, I
the
will tell you this, with Kashimoto's 60 years of teaching, he's never changed a thing, and his personality's never changed. So the funny thing is, my daughter, who's now 23, she started when she was 3, and she used to train with me, and then I would bring her to Kashimoto when she got a little bit older. And but still she was a little kid most of the time with Kashimoto. But then I'll never forget when she was 13, um, we started going back, traveling from New Jersey to Staten Island because I had bought a house in Jersey to
yeah,
train more with Kashimoto again, right? Because at this point, I already had my own school of Kashimoto's in Jersey, a branch. So it was like Isabella really, we didn't have to go to Staten Island because I was Tokyo Karate, right? So, but I would still take her on the weekends and we would train at the Hombu in Staten Island. And we had like a promotion contest, and whenever we had promotions, we would fight full contact,
yeah.
no pads, and brown and black belts are allowed to kick to the face, right? With somewhat control, but you still were
Somewhat
getting kicked.
control.
You still were getting kicked pretty hard,
Yeah,
like
I get it.
you know. So I was sparring with this guy. He was at the time I think I was maybe a fourth-degree black belt, and this guy was a first-degree black belt. And everybody had sparred already. And then Kashimoto said, okay, since Mark's here, meaning me, he always called me by my last name. He goes, since Mark's here, anybody else want to fight Mark? And so this guy jumped up. And I was like, okay. I mean, honestly, I hardly knew the guy because I didn't go in those regular days anymore. So and it turns out he was a Secret Service agent for Bill Clinton. So he was always on the news, like right next to the president.
Yeah,
So we start sparring, and I go to throw a hook kick over his head, and then I'm going to come back with a what do you call it, an instep, right?
no,
And
say.
but he misjudged it totally, and he died. He lunged at me instead of like getting away or ducking, or he lunges at me, and I caught him right here. But I did kind of, as soon as I hit, I pulled back, but he
All
was
right.
coming so fast. So long story short, two of his teeth came out,
Oh, dude.
and I had a hole in my foot. And my daughter was just mortified. She's 13, and she's like, "Oh my God!" But the best part of the story is that Hashimoto yells out, "Yame, Yame!" Like, stop the fight,
Oh,
stop.
dude.
Um, he starts looking at the guy's mouth, blood's pouring down his gi. I'm on my knees facing the other way,
Yeah, yeah.
right? With blood pouring out of my foot. I didn't even know I had a hole in my foot from
Oh,
his teeth.
jeez.
And then Kashimoto walks into the middle of there's not an actual ring, just a wood floor. He walks to the middle, picks up the two teeth, and puts them on the dirty spiderweb windowsill. He goes, "Okay, continue." So we had to keep fighting. The poor guy had no teeth in his mouth, and I was like, that was my daughter's first real opening experience to my teacher, like how brutal he could be, you
That
know?
is funny. Yeah, man. That's old school. That's
Yeah,
hilarious.
and this is like 2013, maybe 2000, and when she was 13, yeah, she was born right before 9/11. So yeah,
Yeah, that's crazy. And two, and our when we got to know one another was through one of our friends and teachers, Jack Hoban.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
had
sure, absolutely,
experience in ninjutsu as well, or Budo Taijutsu. So
right, yeah, yeah.
you have some Hatsumi stories.
Oh,
I don't know
oh
ones
my
I don't know
God,
about ones that you can share with us, but
yeah. Well, I'll tell. I mean, there's definitely one. My initiation, that was quite a story. Uh, So what was it? It was a 2003 Taikai, right?
that was his
So I've been
last
training
one, I
with.
think.
Yeah, it was the last one he came to the
It was
U.S.
in Jersey,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So Jack hosted it, and actually, there's two really good parts to the Hatsumi story. And the third, which I can't say, but
So
the
keep in mind
first one was
this is a public podcast. So
yeah, yeah. The, the first one was he had a long lost friend who was a doctor, and he hasn't been in touch with this guy in over 50 years, but they grew up together or something. And Jack asked me as a favor. I was a cop at the time. He's like, "Artie, you think there's any way we could find this guy? Like, he's an old friend of Hatsumi. We know he lives in New York or Queens somewhere in New York." And I did a little digging, and I managed to find the guy, and we got him to call Hatsumi, and it was
oh,
like such a like a tear-jerking moment when he received that phone call. It was pretty crazy. But because you got to figure out Hatsumi at the time was up there in years. Now he's really up
he
there. But back
was
then,
I think he was
he had to
70.
be
He must
in
have
his
been 70.
70s.
He
Yeah.
was in the 70 back then, yeah. So early 70s. I think that's when he stopped traveling. It's like somewhere between
Hmm.
70 and 73, somewhere in there.
Correct. Yeah. So I managed to get him in touch with this guy. So he was super grateful for that. Then we go to his presidential suite for the night. I forget if it was before training or after the first night of training. So it was me, Bruce,
Yeah.
and
Really. Yeah.
a couple of the Japanese sensei. Yabunaka was there, Nagato was there, and we're up in his suite, big suite, and it was the first time Hatsumi had videotapes of Takamatsu transferred to video for the whole world to see.
Oh, that's
Up
cool.
to this point, no one had seen them yet.
Yeah, yeah.
So he had brought them with him. So me and Jack were at this table, and Hatsumi's talking. He's just being a riot. Everyone's cracking up at everything he says. And they bust out the sake glasses
Oh
and
no.
the bottle of and two big bottles of sake that he brought from Japan, the good stuff. And they pass out all the sake glasses, and everyone's got one but me. And they're all cracking up. And Jack's like, "Artie, I think you're in trouble." Like, what do you mean? He's like, "Well, I think they're planning on having like an initiation for you." Because they didn't really know me. I've just been
Right.
training with Jack all these years, and I wasn't a guy that had the opportunity to go to Japan every year. And you know, so they take one of the glasses from the cabinets, like the big, whatever they are, 12 or 16-ounce glasses, and they filled it up with sake. And they're like, "Well, we don't have a glass for you, so you're gonna have to drink this one." And I had to down a 12-ounce glass
Oh,
of sake,
Jesus.
like a shot. I mean, Craig, within about 5 minutes, I was spinning.
The room's
And then he
spinning, you're
puts
sweating.
the room, oh, so then he puts the tapes on. We all go to the couch to watch the videotapes of Takamatsu. And granted, it's the first time that anyone's seeing these. So this is like a magical moment. And and Hatsumi, he's crying. like he's actually so emotional over watching his
Right.
teacher on these days. It was awesome, man. What an experience. But I got to be a part of that. And to this day, I'm so upset because we had such a great picture with him, and I can never found it. I don't know where it is.
Hmm.
It was me, Bruce, Jack, Hatsumi Sensei, Nagato Sensei, and
That would be,
Yabunaka Sensei, I believe.
yeah, that'd be cool. Dude,
Oh, it was
I mean,
great.
you've got so many stories. It is crazy. We could have this could be like a 5 hour episode just of
Oh,
Artie.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, so tell me a little bit about like, so you become a cop
yeah.
and you
So
serve
nine,
on like the
yeah,
special gun unit, right? And
yes.
so share a
So in
little bit about that.
1991, yeah, absolutely. So in 1991, I got sworn in, and I was assigned to, like, every cop starts off their career doing uniform patrol.
Yeah,
So I happened to draw a precinct in Staten Island, and plus I lived in Staten Island, so it was great. So my patrol was in the 123 precinct, which is the south end of Staten Island, very close to Perth Amboy, New Jersey, right? Now, it wasn't as crime ridden as, let's say, Brooklyn or the Bronx,
right.
but here's the catch. When you work in the sticks, right, and you need help, help's not coming right
Not
away.
coming for a
Like,
while.
you call for help in Brooklyn, in Queens, Manhattan, Bronx, in seconds. I'm not exaggerating. In
Sure.
seconds, you might have 20 police cars pulling in.
There's probably a cop around every
Cops running.
corner.
Yeah, guys will be running on foot to come to you. In Staten Island, you got sometimes minutes because it's just like it really shouldn't even be part of New York City, to be honest with you. It's so urban and it's like any other township except the big city.
Yeah.
So I got assigned there, and um even though that precinct wasn't as busy, I used to take a lot of arrests, and guys didn't want to make a lot of times. Staten Island was a dumping ground for the old timers to kind
Yeah.
of rest out the rest of their career.
Right.
But I was young; I didn't want to do that.
Hungry.
So, so when they got forced into an arrest, they didn't want to make the arrest. They kid, you want this? Yeah, I'll take it. So
Right.
I had like a pretty impressive arrest record for working in Staten Island. And my captain took note of it, and he noticed that I always was willing to, because when in New York, it's not like the movies. Book them, Dano. Here,
Right.
you walk in with the guy, you give him to the processing guy, and you never see it. You go back out on the street. You're with this guy sometimes 20 hours,
Oh, geez.
sweating, taking him to the hospital, doing all the paperwork, voucher and everything. It's
Yeah.
so not like the movies. The worst part of the arrest is the next 15 hours after the arrest.
Well, I
Because
remember you saying one time, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're like Barney Miller was was like the
oh,
best cop
the
show.
best. Absolutely, 100% the most realistic, that's for sure.
Yeah.
By far. And Kojak is pretty good too.
Kojak too. Yeah. Where's my
Kojak.
lollipop?
Yeah, that's actually a really very the way the cops interact with each other, it's so real. But so I did that, and then in 1997 or 96, that captain ended up becoming the second in command of the street crime unit, which turns out of Randall's Island in the Bronx, which is far from Staten Island,
Yeah.
right? And it's but street crime was the most elite and prestigious unit in the NYPD. So even before I was in street crime, cops look at street crime guys probably the way Navy guys look at SEALs,
Sure.
like they're the cream of the crop. They call them the real police. Like everyone always referred to street crime as, yeah, yeah, the real police, because they were there for strictly one thing, and that was to get guns off the street,
Right.
which in New York City
Well, it's
was a big
dangerous,
thing.
man, as you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were the most proactive unit. So this captain asked me if I wanted to go into the unit. Now, I had to say to myself, do I want to give up a 5 minute commute for an hour and 20-minute commute and stress in traffic and dealing with the most violent people on earth? I was like, hell yeah. So, so I
Youth
went into street
wins.
crime. Yeah. So I went into the street crime unit, and it turns out it was one of the best things I ever did. Best cops I ever worked with. I work with great guys in other places too, but as far as actual police work, man, these guys were the best. They were so good at what they did. I learned a lot working with some of these guys, the old timers, really
You dressed
incredible.
up in
They
like
they would
disguises and all that too, right? Or didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, we did all decoy work where you dress up like an old lady and wait for someone to rob you. In fact, one time in Times Square, I dressed up as an old lady and someone broke a bottle over my head to steal my purse. Steal my purse. They thought I was an old lady and
Right,
broke a bottle over my head. So I'll never forget. I lost my cool. I immediately started dashing after this guy across 8th Avenue in Times Square, where all the Broadway plays are.
tackle 'em.
And you're not supposed to come out of cover. Your team makes the arrest,
Right,
and they don't tell the perp that was a cop he tried to rob. They want to be as much as a surprise for the court,
right.
for the courtroom. Like that shock and awe. Oh, by the way, you robbed the cop. You know what I mean? So but I broke character because I was so pissed. Chased this guy across 8th Avenue and I tackled him. Back then, they used to have the metal
Yeah,
garbage pails in the street,
clang, bang,
right?
smash.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were covered in garbage. I'm hitting this guy. And all of a sudden I feel the three guys pulling me off him. It's my sergeant. And he's like, Miss, get off him. You're going to kill him. he's, I was like, I think my cover's blown by now.
Yeah, I think he knows.
I'm like, my stockings are running. My dress is probably all hiked up.
The mustache was the
So
giveaway. I'm just saying, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, but I'll never forget there was this big old tourist there with a cowboy hat and a big steer belt buckle right out of a movie, man. And he looked at me when all the smoke cleared. They had just got out of Les Miserables, the play, and the buses used to line up on 8th Avenue. So
Oh
all
yeah.
the people will leave, all the people coming back to their tour bus from the Broadway show sees this old lady beating on this guy, and they're just in absolute shock. And then when the guy realized, oh, it's a cop, because I took my shield. We used to wear our shields on our neck, on a piece of a shoelace. I used to
Oh
wear it
yeah,
on
yeah.
a leather shoelace, right? And I pulled it out, and the guy goes, boy, that was the best damn crap I've seen on this vacation so far. He goes, it beats the hell out of that play, Less Miserable, my wife just made me see. So yeah, that was
It's like a an episode out of NYPD Blue or something, you know?
Yeah, yeah, we had a lot of fun. We had then we had one guy that he was a sergeant, real great guy, but a control freak. He didn't want any of his guys to get hurt. So he would always want to be the guy to put himself out there.
Oh, sure.
So he was a little older than us and a little beefier.
Yeah.
So we did a UPS decoy. And I'll never forget when he came down the stairs with the costume on, the brown UPS with all his flab coming out of his stomach through the shirt. We would die. And like, Bobby, you sure someone else can't wear the uniform? Are you that? You have to be the guy. Like, no one's gonna believe this is how you go to work.
You're gonna have a heart attack
It was,
delivering
it
boxes.
was he was like 220-pound guy wearing like a small uniform.
All I can think of is like Chris Farley.
It's exactly what it's like.
Well, and
Yep.
two, so as we talked about earlier, mentioned earlier, you were there during the terrorist attack in 9/11.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I was still in street crime at the time. I spent many years there. So when you're in street crime, we deal with a lot of violent felons. So those are the guys that take these cases to court because they don't usually plea out so fast because they're looking at some pretty serious time.
Right.
So everyone we arrested with a gun back then, minimum 5 years prison.
No.
That was the law in New York City. This is mandatory 5 years. So now we're getting them not only with a gun, but doing a robbery with the gun.
Yeah.
Most of our arrests were robberies
Okay.
with guns. So you got looking at serious time, 20 years. So they would take a lot of these cases to court. So we were always in court. A lot of overtime in street crime because we would work our late shift, then go in the morning to court, you
Yeah.
know? So on 9/11, I happened to have court that day. So I was on my way to work super early to beat the traffic, but the traffic was ridiculous that day. It was well, one thing I always remember about the day, how beautiful it was. It was one of the nicest days ever. It was so crystal clear and the warmth was perfect. It was like, I forget, but it felt like it was like 70 and sunny, one of those type of days, like San Diego weather. And
Yeah.
So I jumped off the expressway in Brooklyn and I parked my car in one of the local precincts over there in Sunset Park. And I went to the desk officer and I saluted him. I said, "Hey, Sarge, I'm so and so. I have a court case, but traffic's so bad, I'm going to be late." I said, "You mind if I park my vehicle in your lot? We have plaques like that we put in the dashboard. I just want, out of courtesy, I wanted to let them know I was parking in one of their spaces." He's
Right.
like, "Hold on a second, detective." He goes, "Apparently a plane just hit the World Trade Center and everyone's going to probably be mobilized." So two lieutenants come running down the stairs, and the sergeant goes, "Jump in with these two guys, and when you get to Manhattan, they'll hook up with your guys." And I'm laughing because my guys are all in bed.
Right.
We don't work till 6 o'clock at night, till
Yeah.
2 in the morning, usually with overtime. Usually you don't get home till 5, 6 in the morning. You go to sleep till about 1. So my guys, unless you had court that day like me, you were in bed.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm thinking it's going to be a small little plane, like whatever. And
Yeah, like a
but I
private plane or something that lost control or misjudged.
exactly, yeah. So I jumped in with these two guys, threw the lights and sirens on, they're flying. Now where we were was very close to the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, so everyone got out of our way. We were there in no time, and as I get out, like he literally drops us off, like right by the towers, like maybe a block away.
Oh wow.
And then he said, "Jump out." And then he makes a U-turn to get his car out of there because now there's debris coming down. So I'm like, holy crap. I had to back up a drop because we were getting pelted with debris. Right. So I eventually I decided to, all right, let me go see what's going on. And now I see people hurt. So I run into the building like an idiot. In retrospect, you
Well,
don't think of it then.
you didn't know.
Yeah, but right. But you always hear when you're a kid, you always hear the stories. Oh, someone dropped a penny off the Empire State Building and it would be like a bullet, it would kill you, Well, there was a lot bigger than pennies coming down,
That
chairs and you name it. So but anyway, I made like three quick little trips into the building, just walking people out that burned severely or just blunt trauma, whatever, you name it. And as I was about to go in for trip 4, an old friend of mine from school, and my first job was we have a supermarket chain called Pathmark back in New York, and I worked there with him when I was like 16 years old, and I didn't even know he became a cop, but you can miss him. He's got a very unique look. Only one of them, right? But he stopped me and he said, "Artie, do me a favor. I'm going to need help with this tape. Help me roll this across the street because now people want to see what's going on, and now it's getting really bad, right?" And
so the second plane hadn't hit yet.
no, the second plane right around when he's telling me this is when it comes and hits the tower, right? And that was just absolutely surreal insanity. But anyway, we still have to get that highway roped off because now people want to see. And we know for a fact if you get much further than where we were, you were going to die. There's no way you're surviving the stuff that was coming down. 80 stories.
Oh, it's yeah,
And
it's a long way
so
down.
we start rolling the yellow crime scene tape. It's a big roll, like this thick. So, I literally got my arm through the middle of it, walking while he's holding the other end. And while we were in the process of doing that, a bike messenger. I think I once told you about the bike messenger
Yeah.
from one of those. They race envelopes to these corporate America offices with the documents. Anyway, I'm yelling at the guy, "Stop!" My shield's out. I'm going, "Stop, stop!" And he whizzes right by me. I was like, so I turn around, I'm literally cursing at him under my breath, like, out of just sheer disrespect he had for us. And a huge shard of glass comes down, literally cuts him in half off of his bicycle,
Like a
like right in
movie.
front of us. It was insane. Like that had to be one of the craziest things I've see. You see a lot of crazy things as a cop, but that had to be one of the craziest things to actually see that happen in front of you.
Well, it's like stuff
But
that you'd see in a movie. I mean, that's
yeah,
not something that you would think you'd see in real life. I mean,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
nuts.
it was nuts. But so and then we finished tying off the tape, and then the second building came down a few minutes after that. And I can't help but think if Rob didn't stop me, that's it, I'd be dead. because I
Yeah.
would have been there for my fourth trip, you know.
Must be here for a
So
reason.
he basically saved my life. And I saw one of my oldest training buddies. He was a lot older than me, but even when I was a kid at the karate school, he was like a black belt. Guy was 6'6", Ed Day, a fireman. Couldn't miss him. He was so tall. And picture 6'6", and he was really, really good at karate. And he was a kicker. I mean,
And
you
tall too,
couldn't
so
touch this guy.
he could kick you
Oh,
like
and he was
you would
fast.
punch.
But he unfortunately we crossed paths as I was coming out. He was going in, and he never made it out, so he died.
Did your
I knew
buddy
about seven.
that you reconnected with, did he also pass away?
No, no, he's still around, and he's very he's still very emotional over it to this day. And I will say one thing, I've never really talked to him about it. He gets too choked up. He definitely shows signs of probably having PTSD about it. So I never really, and I'm not a friend of him like that.
Right,
Like we're old
right. You're
friends, you know?
acquainted now, but
Right. But I always thank him on 9/11. I always write to him and stuff like that. And I always put something on his wall for his family to know what a hero he is. And
nice.
I heard that right after the building collapsed, when everybody was running away, which you had to, or you were dead at
Yeah,
that point, and then that big cloud of smoke came, we all left, but he came back. And I think I heard a story where he actually saved one of the few people that was survived from the collapse.
oh
I
wow.
think he shot out a window. I never really looked in to confirm it, but I heard that story. One of these days, I got to look into that. But I heard he took his gun out and he had to shoot out a window to get somebody out that was
Huh.
trapped.
Just
Yeah, that was
surreal
pretty amazing.
times. I mean, you wouldn't to be involved in stuff like that. I can remember when it happened. I mean, I was, in Michigan, so I was a world away, but I can remember
Yeah,
exactly where I was. I can remember when the first plane hit and the reports were on the radio and same thing like we were talking about. They're thinking
yeah.
at first it was a private plane, and then when the second one hit, like, no, we're under attack, and those were crazy times. You
Well,
weren't
I remember right after we taped up the tape, I was taking a second to call my dad real quick, and I was one of the few people I still had service. If you had a certain, I think I forget if it was T-Mobile or whatever it was, you still had
Nextel or
service.
whatever,
One of them. So I called my dad, and he was living he had moved to Jersey at the time, and I'm telling him, "Hey, you're not going to believe what's going on, dude. Turn on the news." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Turn on the news," and so he turns on the news. He's like, "Holy crap!"
right?
And all of a sudden, I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "Dad, I got to get out of here. The building's coming down," because it was so crazy how the building came down. It was like it started slow at the top, but you heard it like this eerie metal twisting, like in when Freddy Krueger runs his nails through
Yeah,
pipes,
yeah,
like that kind of noise. And he's like, "What are you talking about? I'm watching it live. It's not coming down." But there must have been like a 3 or 4 second delay from the news. And then all
right.
of a sudden he saw it coming down and he's screaming at me, "Run, run, don't be a hero." He's telling me. And I'm like, okay. And I just, but you couldn't outrun the cloud. And my daughter was 4 months old. I really thought this is how I'm going to die in a ball of smoke. Because you always hear people die from smoke inhalation,
Right.
not the fire. And you couldn't outrun this thing. It was huge.
Oh,
I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face doing this. That's how dark it was. And I literally felt pieces in my lungs. Like you couldn't help but breathe stuff in. There was no way around it.
right.
So eventually, there's a water fountain in World Financial Center, which is close by. And I took my shirt off and dipped it in there because I saw other people doing it, making a filter.
Yeah.
And I used that over my face to at least prevent some of the particles coming in. But it was probably too late. I inhaled so much of it already, you know.
And you were
But
on
knock on wood, I
security.
mean, I have nothing, no major me. I have what everybody else has that was there: sleep apnea,
Yeah.
sinus issues, chronic bronchitis from time to time. But are these things that people just get when they get older? Also, I don't know. But I get monitored for it. I'm part of the program, the World Trade Center program. But I feel good.
It's good. You were on the security detail on the site for months afterwards
Yeah.
too, weren't you?
Yeah, because street crime, we were a very proactive arrest unit. And at the time of 9/11, everything else got put on the shelf. Like the number one priority was to fix New York.
Right.
So it wasn't about crime for the next couple of months. So we were basically used for ground zero. So we were doing the bucket brigade. And let me tell you, we were working 16-hour shifts at times, 6 days a week. And there were guys that were still going back volunteering afterwards,
Well, it's
after doing
how
a
our country
16-hour
came
shift.
together. I mean,
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah,
one good thing that I think that came out of it. Obviously, it's horrific, and if you could take it back, we would. But
yeah.
that was one thing that I saw that everybody, I don't care what political party you're with, what religious
Hmm.
background, what color you were,
Yeah,
what ethnicity, didn't matter, man. Everybody was like, we're Americans and we're sticking out this together. And people loved
yeah,
cops, they loved
yep.
fire departments, and I'd
Oh
love to
yeah.
bring that part of it back.
And there's probably one of the few times where you see cops all the time just taking food and coffee from strangers. Where before 9/11, you would never trust somebody giving
Right.
you a hamburger. What the hell did they put in here?
Yeah, spit in it or
Did
something.
this guy get a ticket last week? So,
And weren't you,
so
and I don't know when this happened, weren't you responsible for bringing in one of the actual terrorists that was part of that operation?
so So I was a training officer at the time, and two of the people that were in the precinct working with my training guys, they responded to an accident. I think one of my training guys was in their car, just like these two girls happened to be like traffic girls. Unfortunately, one of them actually passed away. She was in a horrible accident. But anyway, they responded to an accident, and anytime there's an injury in an accident, you have to run the person's license, mandatory. And the guy came back with a very common name, Muhammad. It's like Smith or Rodriguez
Right.
in different cultures, right? And they always, whenever you run a name that's so common, they usually come back with a warrant
Sure.
because it's somebody else. It's somebody out there named Muhammad with a warrant, right?
Right. You did
But
something.
as they're reading the thing, they realize, hey, this one's pretty descriptive, like right down to, let's say, a scar on the right cheek, and
Yep.
the guy had it.
Hmm.
Well, it turns out this guy was one of a crew of like I think 11 to 12 guys that made the fake IDs for the hijackers to
Wow.
get them into the airports and stuff. So it was big time. It was a big time bust.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Taking
Just from a simple, the guy was a cab driver. He was a New York cab driver. It was a cabbie accident.
no stereotypes
Imagine.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
Oh,
And it's funny
gee,
because before 9/11, oh no, well, yeah, it's a little bit but cab drivers take a beating, let's just say that.
I'm sure.
Those poor guys. I mean, listen, they get into so many accidents. It's so crazy. They just completely expect you're going to stop for them when they cut 4 lanes of traffic to pick somebody up. It's God, they're crazy.
Now we were talking before we were doing the show on that a couple days ago when we were talking about doing the show.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about PTSD and
Hmm.
through 9/11 and just in your job in general. I mean, you've seen and done some very intense things, witnessed some things, participated in things and
Yeah.
whatnot. And you say that you really haven't experienced much PTSD. And obviously you know a lot of guys who have. Uh,
Hmm.
do you have any reason, rationale, theories on why you think that that hasn't really affected you?
Um, I don't know. My wife will tell you because I'm a sociopath. No, I'm kidding. But no, no, no. I think it's because of the training, the martial arts training. That concept of training yourself like a warrior for so many years. I think when you have that and you combine that with good morals and ethics, like a good compass, when you put the training in, I think it almost gives you like a suit of armor,
Sure.
for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
I think it gets to you and you can really empathize with people and even sympathize for bad stuff like that. But you don't get the constant demons in your head,
Yeah.
you know, because you in your head you're like, well, life goes on. Let's go train. And I think that training makes that non-existent.
Yeah.
And I notice that happens with other guys that train, you
Well,
know?
you came from a good family too, and
Yeah.
that's gotta be part of it as well. You know, you grew up with a
Hmm.
loving mother and father. Not to say I know my folks loving too, and
Yeah. Yeah.
still issues, I suppose, but yeah, a supportive family as well as your training.
Yeah. I love the quote. I forget who said it, whether it was like Buddha or Bruce Lee or whatever, or everyone says these people. But I love the quote where it says, I'd rather be a warrior tending a garden than a gardener going to war, or
Yeah.
something to that effect. It's really, I write that sometimes on my chalkboard in my dojo because I think it's such a powerful quote and it says everything, you know? You just got to keep training.
So how much do you think you utilized your training, your karate or martial arts
Mhm.
training in your job as a police officer?
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm going to say every day
Yeah.
because it's obviously, you train too, it's not all about the physical.
No, actually,
It's
that's the tip of the iceberg, you know?
yeah, when you have the confidence from the training, it really makes you live that, like just like your site is called, that Peace Walker life. You kind of take on the role as wanting to protect people and not see them get hurt, you know? And so yeah, so when I talk to somebody in the street, even if they're extremely irate, number one, I always try to empathize. What's this guy's situation? Like, what made this guy the way he is? Like, he's obviously looks crazy, or maybe I don't know if you're dealing with your typical criminal that New York cops see every day. A lot of people are very, very poor or homeless and just out of their mind from drugs. You got to say what made them get to that point, because at one
Right.
point they weren't like that,
Yeah.
you know? So I think by having that empathy for them, again, it's not feeling bad, it's not sympathy,
Right.
it's empathy. It kind of gives you a little more patience in your dialogue, where some cops have the attitude of, because I said so.
Yeah.
Well, get out of here. Why? Why do I have to leave? Because I said so. I mean, if you want to see someone do the opposite of be calm, just tell them that, you know?
He was like my
You know,
my dad's Marine three step, I will ask, I will tell, and then I'll make.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to take a guy, some of my partners were like, dude, I don't know how you do it. But at the end of the day, in 21 years working in the most proactive, many of those working in proactive units, having to fist fight people daily, you know, I've never been injured on the job. And I think it's because I've always treated people with respect.
Yeah,
And, yeah, granted, before they're in handcuffs, if we're fighting and we have to do what we have to do and they happen to get hurt, yeah, that happened quite a bit. I've been sued for
sure.
millions of dollars,
Yeah,
know. But the point is, once those handcuffs are on and situate, that's it. Now I tell him straight out, listen, if you act like a gentleman for the rest of I'm going to be with you for a long time. If you act like a gentleman, I will treat you like one. When I used to get my prisoners, I should go to the deli and get them roast beef sandwiches, while the other cops were going to the vending machine giving them Snickers bars. My guy was eating a roast beef sandwich. I've had prisoners say, "Hey, could this guy be my arresting officer?"
well,
you
it's
know,
funny too what the little things how the little things make a huge difference.
yeah. I never had someone try to bite my ear off when I was fingerprinted down because I always treated him that way,
So you didn't arrest
and
Mike
again,
Tyson, that's what I'm hearing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. We actually did run into him, and you know what he did? He threw his car keys to one of the cops, said, "Here, you could take it. I don't want it anymore." He crashed like this beautiful car, BMW or something, and he was so pissed. And he literally gave the cop his car keys and said, "You could take them, man. It's a gift." Like, he didn't do anything wrong. It was just an accident.
Right, right.
But can you imagine, like, he threw his car keys to
Like,
one of
yeah, I
my
don't want it
guys?
anymore. It's like I'm not gonna, the suit, it's dirty, so you can
Yeah,
have it. I'll get a new one.
yeah. But
Crazy.
yeah, no. So I think that the martial arts training, all the physical, allows you to do that way easier. You know, whereas
Yeah,
you'll see guys mouth their volume gets louder when they have no training, and they think, okay, I'm going to compensate for what little I know physically. I'm going to increase my volume level. Well, that'll work. Yeah, good luck.
yeah. Good luck,
You
right?
know, especially with a career criminal.
Yeah, seriously. People are used to conflict and violence and
Hmm.
all that.
Hmm. Yeah.
So here and so in the hard streets of New York, basically, you're honing your verbal communication, conflict communication. You know, I don't want to call it a system, but so when did
Hmm.
you start realizing, hey, I got something going on here that other people, other officers can really capitalize on, or
Right.
train
So
and mentoring the other officers into, some of your methodologies that you discovered through just doing
yeah,
it or were taught or whatever.
that's a great question. I think before a lot of it really got sculptured working with Jack and training with Jack. But
Okay.
as on more of the police end of it, even before I met Jack, I had a couple of good mentors that were old time cops, and these guys can handle situations beautifully, beautifully. So, like I said in the beginning, my first precinct was a dumping ground for old timers.
Right.
So I learned from a lot of old school cops, some of the toughest guys you can imagine. That now you look at them, they were a little more of grandfatherly.
Yep.
But back in the day, these were the guys that were, with the Coca-Cola nightsticks breaking skull,
I still have one of
so
those, man.
they, yeah, so yeah. So I'll never forget. I was a rookie and they put me with this old timer, one of the greatest guys I ever knew, this guy Ed, and I'm driving, right? And he let me drive, which was usually the old timers don't let the rookies drive.
Right.
But he, back when I became a cop, guys, we still had a policy where you could have one or two alcoholic beverages with your meal. Believe it or not, that was the thing.
That's
So
funny.
some of these guys, their version of one or two was you know, pints,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
So I was driving this day and Eddie's in the car and uh grand larceny comes over. Someone had their wallet stolen. So me with the rookie mentality, I immediately put the lights on and I hit the gas and I start flying there, right?
He's like, whoa, whoa, kid.
And
What are
Eddie,
you doing?
exactly what happened. Eddie goes, whoa, whoa, slow down, slow down. Shuts the lights off. And I'm looking at him like, Eddie was at 32. That's like in progress. That's when you usually would go a little faster. He goes, let me tell you something, kid. The only time we go lights and sirens is when somebody's got my wallet. He goes, he checks his back pocket. He goes, I still got my wallet. But then we would get to a scene and I would watch this guy talk to people. And he was just, it was unbelievable. He could quell any situation with his voice. He kids around with the people, even the stressed out. Listen, think about what it would take for you to call the police.
Right.
We take for granted. I've never had to ever in my life call the police for anything other than maybe I need a report for an accident or something like
Yeah.
that. Never in my life have I had to call 911.
Yeah, people
So
are
I
having a
can't
really
even
bad
imagine.
day when they got to call the cops.
Yeah. And that's all we respond to all day long. So
Yep.
people are at their worst moment, maybe in their whole life. So you're always dealing with people that are stressed out, no matter what. And I think a lot of people don't get that, you know? So right off the bat, you got to, make sure people feel comfortable with you. So what this guy Eddie was a master at was number one, of course, the empathy, right? His tone, his tone of voice, the way he talked to people. He would always match them and then bring it down. So if a guy was screaming, he wouldn't be condescending and be like, "Hey man, what's up?" Like he would be like loud back to the guy for a second, And then he'd be like, hey, hey, let's talk it out. After he got, so he would mirror them and
Right.
then kind of mad and then bring that guy down. And it worked. It was unbelievable. Like everybody would match him. And it was an art. It really was an art. You have something you have to learn, I think. So I would see him also pick things like, and I learned this from other guys too, where, find something in your quick scan of their house, see something you can talk about. Like maybe they have an ugly picture on hanging on the wall. Why would anyone hang such an ugly looking picture? Like, hey man, what's the story with that picture? Like, what's it mean? Like you find something in common with the
Yeah.
people and you kind of build on that too. And that's another thing I learned from the guy one that was a great cop. So I put a lot of these principles together and then Doc Thompson came with verbal judo
Doc Rhino. There we
back.
go.
Yeah. So I was one of the original NYPD guys to go through his course with him teaching it. Because then very soon after he came, everybody was a verbal judo instructor.
Right, right,
It's
right.
so, he like, I don't know what the way you got certified back then, but apparently it was like the Pope just blessing people. You're a teacher, you're a teacher. Because all of a sudden in 3 weeks we had 10 verbal judo instructors from this guy
Yeah,
being in there. But
I met
but
Doc and I trained under him when Jack sent me. That's the first time I met
mhm,
him, and I got certified as an instructor under him before he passed away. So maybe I don't know,
yeah,
like three to 5 years or so before he passed away, and then
yeah,
obviously Gary Klugwitz took over
right,
after
right.
him.
Yeah, Kluwitz, yep. Yeah,
Hey,
well,
I'm gonna
so I had
stop
it
us
with
for one
Doc.
second, Artie.
Sure.
So yeah, so as in Gary took over, and then
Yep.
verbal judo turned into VDI, verbal defense and influence, and
Yeah.
it's probably a good segue into our RGI days when you and I got to hang
Yeah.
out a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, a lot of the concepts were basically the same. And Jack, during a lot of the training sessions, I used to train with him I think it was Monday and Wednesday or Wednesday and Friday. I think it was Monday, Wednesdays. I
Monday,
used to go to
Wednesday, I
Spring
think.
Lake. Yeah, so I was a regular in his class. We used to go to Spring Lake, and we would always talk about doing something with a good group of guys that aren't like admin cops
Yep.
or admin Marines or guys that walk the walk, talk the talk. Because nobody wants to sit in a lecture from a police officer that did 1 year on the street and 8 years in the legal division as a lawyer,
Right.
you know? Right? So we we used to talk about the beginnings of RGI. Let's set something up like this, where, and then he brought in a bunch of his guys that he's known, um, very, some legendary characters, as you know, like Colonel Joe Marine, right?
Shushko, yeah.
Ronald Reagan's helicopter pilot,
It's
crazy,
crazy.
crazy PT guy. And just a great group of guys. So, so we took a lot of those principles that were in verbal judo and kind of put it into a real symbiotic approach of the ethics with the communication and when all else fails, the physical tactics,
Yep.
right? And we put it on a pyramid with ethics being the foundation, the biggest portion, because really it's the most important. Because without
Oh,
proper
absolutely.
ethics, none of it really can be done right.
No, it can't be
And
done
then,
right, and you just end up being a thug if if you are
right,
successful, so to speak, at whatever, but you just turn into what you're probably trying to defend yourself against.
correct. And then the middle section, which is the second largest, communication. And this goes back to what you had asked me before about, how did you, as a cop, like how often did you have to use the karate and I said every day, but not the way you're thinking, where I'd have to fight people every day and
Right.
kick them, or it was more because the confidence it gave you to communicate. And when you communicate with confidence, people, I think it gets through to them a lot faster because in the back of their mind is like, hey, this guy is really trying to help me. And you know what? If I'm thinking of doing something to him, this might not be the guy to do it to.
Right. And
Because and that's what the confidence does, people sense that.
they do. And that's such a hard, I think, concept to get across to people when, like when I
Yeah.
train, because I train, as I train everything
Yeah.
from civilians
Yeah.
to cops, military, whatever. But a lot of people are enamored by the physical portions of the martial
Yeah.
arts and defensive tactics. And it's like, well, it's kind of the alpha and the omega. The alpha meaning the beginning, that
Hmm.
once you learn it and you're confident that you can protect yourself physically,
Right.
that's the beginning, that's the foundation. And that comes across in how you walk, how you talk, how you present yourself to the world, how you interact with people. But it's
Right.
also the end because it should be your last resort. But
Yeah.
you can go there if you want. And if you need, I should say, you can go there if you need to,
Yeah.
but it's a last resort.
I mean, think about it. Could you name 10 people that started martial arts because they wanted to be peaceful? No. People see a movie. Oh my God, I want to learn that.
I want to be a
I want to be,
badass.
I want to, yeah.
Yeah.
And then what happens is after training for 2 or 3 years, they realize, whoa, I don't want to be a badass. I just want to be able to keep people safe if I have to,
Yeah.
myself, my family, and other people. I want to know that I can walk somewhere and not have to worry about, giving someone my milk money, you know?
Yeah. And feeling that peace and confidence inside of you that, it's just as Robert Humphrey, Jack's mentor said, it's just a better
Hmm.
life. It's a better
Yeah,
life.
correct. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, if you know someone that joined martial arts just because they want to be more calm and peaceful. It's probably someone a lot older that
Yeah.
started older, and maybe they were sick and they were told, yeah, you need to go do some tai chi or go do some of this or that qigong.
Right.
That's like
Yeah.
that, but that's the rare exception. Most people, me, it was. I'll tell you straight up, it was. I was. Don't forget, I was 10 years old when I started. I'll never forget. I saw the Five Deadly Venoms, the Shaw Brothers Kung Fu
Yeah,
movie.
I
I
know it
was like,
well.
whoa! I was blown away by
I
that.
want that.
And then I saw. Once I saw that, I searched out other videos, VHS back then, and I found Enter the Dragon, which I think that probably made 90% of the old timers
Oh
start
yeah,
martial arts, right?
absolutely. I mean, mine was my brother. My brother was beating the living daylights out of me ever since I was a kid. And my dad's marine brilliance, he's like, I have the solution to this. So I can
Wait a
remember,
second. Did you have a sister?
no, my So that aside, my dad brings my brother and I down into the
Yeah.
basement, straps boxing gloves on both of us, thinking like, oh, this will help build Craig some confidence and all that.
Greg, I have to go throw my charger in real quick. Let me
Okay.
grab my.
So my dad brings us down to the basement, straps boxing gloves on us, thinking like, hey, this is going to solve the problem. In the meantime, my brother just beats the living crap out of me. So I can remember, well, I don't know how well, I was like 6, so I don't know how well my memory is, but
Mhm.
in this memory anyways, my dad gets this look on his face, breaks us up, and then he decides to teach, well, originally it was my brother and I karate. And then my brother kind of faded away, and it really stuck with me. And then after that, I saw, Enter the Dragon and all this kind of stuff. But
Yep.
and it did. It changed my. I don't know, because I'm your age. I'll be 55 in a couple
Yeah.
months, and I don't know what I would be like if it wasn't for this journey
Yeah.
that I've had. It might not be bad, but it'd be totally different. Is my guess.
Hmm. Right.
And then I met Jack. I don't know. It's probably 20 years ago now. But and then that was, the RGI. I can remember talking about RGI.
Yeah.
He had
What led you
just
to Jack the first time?
I I loved ninjutsu. I loved the
Yeah.
ninja back in the 80s, and I
Yeah.
bought
Me
I
too. That's
I bought his book Tanto Jitsu, and I still
yeah.
I still have it, from 1986. So
Wow.
back in
Yeah.
those days, me and a buddy of mine, Kevin DeVries, which I think you've met, we started. Well, actually, I started training previous to that, but
Hmm.
he and I back in the '80s were doing. We'd go to a seminar and then we would practice. We were already, we were already
Yeah.
instructors in other styles, but we would go to a ninjutsu seminar, then practice on our own the best we could, get all that Stephen
Right.
Hayes books.
Yeah. 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 Sure.
And then I had a
That's
list
great.
of all these different guys that I wanted to train with, Danny Inosanto and
Hmm.
and the Gracie family, and Jack was on that list.
Yeah.
So originally
That's
he was
great.
still out in San Diego, and then when he
Yeah.
relocated back to Jersey, I'm like, screw it, man, I'm gonna go and see him. So
Hmm.
it was during he does his monthly seminars.
Hmm.
It was
Yeah.
one of the Christmas seminars. So I went for the training and then the Christmas party.
Uh-huh. Great.
And
Yeah. They
then
were fun.
they were great, right? And then I just kept
Yeah.
coming back. And I remember every month you'd look at me like, oh, you came back. What are you doing here? I'm like, well, I'm here to train. And we just
Yeah.
developed a relationship. And then I asked him to come out to my academy to do a seminar. And
Hmm.
he's like, I'll only do it if you teach half of it. And I thought that was
Mm.
really cool. I thought that was cool. So
Hmm.
I did half the day on like ground knife defense, and he did
Hmm.
half the day on, Budo Taijutsu, and we just kind of developed this relationship as time went on. And then I remember talking with him. At the time I'd gone back to college for another degree, and I was at the library, at the public library, studying. And he called me. I'm like, oh, he called. So I went down in my car, and I remember we talked for like 2 hours about
Mm.
RGI. And I had
Right.
just been downsized from my job at the time.
Hmm.
And I want to say he was just either downsized or he quit his one job before he opened his company up. And
Yep.
he's like, "Hey, I'm getting this, Resolution Life International going together. You and I probably had met a couple times previous to that, like at a
Yeah.
seminar or something.
We were
But
probably at that Christmas party.
could have been. Yeah, could have been. And he was telling me the guys, so Artie's going to be part of it, and Mike's going to be a part of it, and Bruce is going to be a part of it, and I think you'd be
Mm.
great. So what do you think? I'm like, well, let's do it. And before you know it, we're teaching Camden and doing all the crazy stuff that we did.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
cool.
that was great. It was such, I tell people all the time, because that program was so well-rounded, I can honestly say, and you can imagine the NYPD sends us and pays for some pretty big time training,
Oh, I'm
right?
sure
RGI, in my opinion, was the best damn course
there was.
ever put together. I've to this day I can't think of a course better than RGI what we did.
Well,
I
and that's the
really
feedback that we consistently got from all the guys, and I don't know how many people we trained over, really a 10-year period, but we trained a
correct.
lot of guys, and I
Yeah,
think the best ones were when they came to Spring Lake.
absolutely. Yeah, for
Not
sure.
when, not as, I mean,
Yeah,
there's still great programs when we went to them,
right.
but it was, getting them away from their departments.
Yep.
We're training out on the beach,
Yeah,
telling stories, having dinner
yeah,
afterwards, bonding. I can remember a couple of actually, it was a group of the Camden guys that were running with Shushko the morning before our beach training.
yeah.
And they were all, I think most of them were Marines that, before they were
Yeah, they
cops
were.
and all
Yeah,
that.
right,
And I can
right.
remember one of them because I was running with them or trying to anyways. But I can remember them kind of talking amongst themselves like, man, I miss this. I miss this
Hmm.
camaraderie. I miss
Yeah,
this feeling of
yep.
it's that
And by getting them to come to us, it's it's the same concept why my teacher used to always say, don't ever train anyone for free, even if they pay you $1.
right. Got to have
If you
skin in the
don't,
game.
you gotta. Otherwise, you're never gonna take it serious. So their skin in the game was the being in the losing their comfort zone to come to us.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
that's like their $1.
And they
They
got
come
to
to us.
yeah, and I think part of it is they're out of their element. They're not in their
Yeah.
department. They are not as distracted.
Hmm.
It's like, no, I'm going to be gone for these 3 days. And most of them, some of them commuted, but a lot of them got, the RGI barracks. They're, at
Yeah.
Seagirt
Yeah.
Lodge. I mean,
Figure it lunch.
I still stay
Yeah.
there, when I go out to see
Yeah.
Jack. But
Yeah.
But no, it was a
Well,
great.
how many times did I knock on your door, Craig? You mind if I grab a shower in your room?
Yeah, that's
Because
right.
to go to dinner all sweaty after training, no, I
Yeah, you
can't
got
do that.
sand
I'm
in
from
your
New York. I don't go to dinner sweaty.
you got sand in your butt and all the
Yeah.
those
Oh,
are those and what a great team and what an honor it was to work
oh
with,
yeah,
you and Jack and
yeah,
Shishko and Penzak and
yeah,
Bruce and
yeah.
just all the and Mitch Little. I mean,
Hmm.
all the
Yeah,
guys and gals that were on that team are just
absolutely. Yeah,
top
we had a
top
great
notch.
team. And even like, and then we had a little bit for everybody.
Yep.
And especially, in the early days, we even had Joe on the team. He was an ER
Oh yeah,
nurse.
Joe Lau,
Remember?
yeah, yep.
Yeah, I mean, we covered all bases of conflict,
And
you
then
know?
let's not forget James Shanahan. Let's
Oh yeah, I brought Jimmy in. I had to bring Jimmy in.
oh, what a character,
Jimmy,
man.
entertainment.
I got no, seriously, I gotta reach out to him
Yeah,
too and say hi. We bounce back and forth on Facebook every once in a while,
yeah, oh yeah.
but no, what an
So
honor to, working with all you guys, but also all the work that we did with the officers and it wasn't
mhm,
just officers, as you know. I mean, we worked with some
yeah,
military
yeah.
guys, officers, the park
Park
rangers,
rangers.
yep,
Yeah.
the
Hey,
medical personnel.
we saved the life of two. We
Yeah,
had two guys that approached us later that they were contemplating suicide until they went to our course.
yeah.
So in addition to being about conflict resolution and handling situations in their field, it had some real personal development byproducts to it as well,
But
you
I
know?
don't think it can be any other way. I mean, that's one of the things that I emphasize in my trainings and with the people that I work with, and myself
Hmm.
included. It's like there is real no self-defense and
Hmm.
self and personal protection and conflict management at some point without personal development.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
you might
yeah.
you might be able to fake it for a while, but like I said, you can't hide crazy. Yeah, at some point
Right.
it comes out.
One of the things I used to always do when my commute to the city, when I worked in Manhattan, I stopped listening to music altogether. I would just get personal development books on audio, and I would literally
Yeah.
bombard myself every day with personal development to the point where this is my subconscious. This is all I take in. I don't take in any negative, you know? And if people around me are negative, I'll again, I'll be an active listener. I'll empathize with them, but I'm gonna kind of move away from them because they're gonna eventually bring you down. It's like a
Absolutely.
magnet. It's like a
Yeah.
total magnet.
It's like our moms always said, be careful who your friends are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's you can't
yeah.
so that's probably a good segue to
There it is. Look at that.
that's right.
Who's on that cover? Who's that guy on the left?
Right? See, that I recognize that shadow, that silhouette. So Artie, so you wrote a book, and to be honest,
I
with you,
did.
I love the title, man. It's straight and to the point. Verbal
That's
de-escalation.
that's what I wanted. Yeah.
And you just came out with it. Like I
Mhm.
was saying to you before the show, I was hoping to get through all of it. I'm about
Mhm.
probably a third of the way through. But what a great accomplishment. I know, from writing a book standpoint, but you have a lot to share knowledge-wise for anybody out there who is looking to learn how to communicate during conflict,
Mhm.
obviously live this protector lifestyle, whether you're a cop or you're just anybody out there who's looking to
Yeah,
communicate better with other people, and that
yeah.
goes across the board in your personal life, in your professional life, in your public
Hmm.
life. So so many
Well,
things that we're talking about that I think come into mind on this. And the first one was the basis, like you said earlier, empathy and
mhm.
connection.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us a little bit about the book.
So I think the reason why I wrote it and what really pushed me into writing it is, for the last, well, not the last 3 years, but kind of my last precinct I worked in was the 17th precinct, and which covered the Midtown East section of Manhattan, right? And I had the real honor for the job to make up an assignment for me because I was a detective. And after street crime ended, I bounced around to a couple of other units, Grand Larceny Task Force. I even did a stint with auto crime. The next stage is generally a detective squad. But I'll be honest with you, it's boring work.
Right.
It's really boring work. You put a suit on every day. and you answer the phone and you go to arrest people that violated an order of protection 95% of the times. 5% of the times are what you might see on TV. And even that's exaggerated,
I'm
right?
sure. Yeah.
We always say the best thing, the only good thing about being in the detective squad is when you're at a barbecue. That's about it. So I really didn't want to go to the squad. I was dreading it. And I also I had part ownership in a security company at the time on the
Okay.
side. So that would could destroy me with that company. I wouldn't be able to, because detective squad hours, when I say squad, it's when you're assigned to a squad and you handle all the cases where crimes in the past,
Yep.
perpetrators no longer there.
Yep.
So it goes to the detectives and then you got to try to solve it. Barney Miller, right?
Right.
So so I made a phone call, and I'm in all my years in the police department, I've never had to actually make a phone call for a favor. People would come to me and ask me, "Hey, you want to do this? You want to do this?" But I was like really torn with this assignment. I was like, called a friend of mine. He was like a big time boss. I said, "Got anything for me that could keep me on a certain shift because it's going to kill my business?" And he said, "Let me see what I could do." 2 days later, you're the new training detective in the 17th precinct.
Oh, there
So
we
when the
go.
rookies graduate the academy,
They
they
go to
spend this
you.
first 6 months with me on the street. I was like TJ Hooker.
Yeah. So you're
Like I
running
was
every
really like,
episode.
yeah, I threw my PR 24.
Yeah.
That's yeah. So I managed to train like three different groups of recruits. And you with them for 6 months. So that's
Yep.
took up and then a break in between. It was like a 2 to 3 year assignment, you
Yeah.
know? But in that 2 to 3 years working with these young kids, I've watched them grow so exponentially in their career to the point where some of them were like cops of the month, cops of the year,
Nice.
um, solving big cases. One guy left the NYPD and gets into an upstate New York police department. He's now the chief of police
Oh
there.
wow.
These are rookies that I trained.
Yeah.
Bunch of guys, captains, lieutenants. Adriano is a lieutenant.
Adriano, The Rock. Yeah.
He's a lieutenant now. I
Oh,
mean, he's
that's
got an
awesome.
extremely successful career right now. He's the special operations lieutenant in a precinct in Queens.
Nice.
I mean, he really made a good career for himself, you know? And let me tell you, a lieutenant in the NYPD these days, they're making with overtime probably close to $250,000 a year.
Oh wow, I didn't realize they were making
So,
that much. Well,
oh yeah,
not to mention if they're
lieutenant's the
living in
best
New
rank.
York.
Yeah, well, lieutenant's the best rank because you still could take cash overtime. Once you're captain, you're considered
Yeah.
management.
Yep.
So it's all no
Salary.
overtimes in time. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, the guys they always used to tell me like, Artie, how did you get this guy to comply with you? And I would go over the principles again from RGI, verbal judo, with the biggest principle obviously being empathy, because
Yep.
I said it a million times already. It's so important, and so many people don't do it. And one of the guys even used to call me the EDP whisperer, which is like emotionally disturbed person.
Yeah.
Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer. They're like, Artie, you could talk to any EDP and you're like his best friend. Whereas any other cop, we'd end up having a hit him in the head with a nightstick and put him in like one of those. We have body bags that only your head sticks out. It's like a cat. I don't know if you ever seen a cat, a violent cat that goes
Yeah.
to the vet.
Yeah. They put them in the bag.
We have those for people. They call it the burrito. So, so they're like,
Then you put the
you're
hood on them and
prisoners.
they're good.
Yeah, it's like we never have to do that with you when you respond to anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you just got to know how to talk to these people. It is a little bit of an art form, but so I took a lot of those principles and I put them into the book. Now, the book, it's very textbook like as opposed to war stories for me. There's no war stories, but it almost reads like a how-to book. And I can tell you, anyone that reads this book from cover to cover, they're going to get some really good pointers to make their communication better, whether it's with their family, friends, uh, uh, difficult people that they deal with in their life, coworkers. It's really for everybody. That's the beautiful thing, Craig, about what we do, especially with like RGI. Works for everybody, not just cops and Marines.
Well, that's it.
It works for teachers,
Yeah,
right?
because everybody's, we may have a lot of differences, but the one thing that remains the same is we all have to work with other people, and
Yeah,
with people comes conflict.
right.
And what I really liked about your book is you develop a lot of frameworks. There's a lot
Yeah,
of frameworks in there, and then you had
yeah.
scenario and role playing, which was
Role
cool
plays, yeah,
to kind of bring it
yeah.
together. And you, like you were saying, you used the role play scenarios. It wasn't just all cops. It was like, well, here's a scenario for home, and here's a scenario for
Hmm.
work. And I noticed there was a
Yes.
lot of work scenarios
Yep.
in there. That was cool.
Cross
And,
cultural too,
yep, yep. And then you used
right?
case studies. So the case
Right.
studies were great.
Yeah. And I purposely I didn't want to get into like, a case study that lasts for 6 months where because then they're obviously doing something wrong.
Right.
So I would find case studies where conflict was solved fairly quick. But the role play is, you know, I think a great teacher to me for role playing was you already mentioned him, Shanahan.
Shanahan, yep.
Shanahan's like the king of role play.
Oh yeah,
That guy's
yeah.
been doing role playing since I was a rookie.
Yeah. Well, and he's an
I went to
actor too, so that
correct.
helps,
Yeah,
you
that
know.
is true. But I don't know if you noticed, but Jim Shanahan, he was also a trainer at John Jay College,
Yeah.
Criminal School of Criminal Justice, and I went through his course it's called an emergency psychology technician.
Oh, that's cool.
And the end result is to talk somebody through a door. That's like your final exam. They have this big wooden door, and he hires professional actors to make your life
Oh,
difficult.
that would be
And
cool.
and
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
so great. Jack went to it with me. Jack did the course with me.
Oh, did
Me
he?
and Jack spent 3 days there.
That
Correct.
would have
Yeah.
been interesting.
Oh, it was fun, man. And we had to talk people through a door, that like hostage situation, or they're
Yeah,
gonna kill themselves. But and Jimmy would take real case studies and turn them into a role play.
right.
And it was brilliant. And it was so much fun. And I tried to put some of the idea of that into this book as well.
Nice.
Without not using his cases, obviously, but generic cases too.
So you can get the book on Amazon, correct?
Yep, it's on Amazon.
And I'll put a link in the show notes for anybody out there if you want to check it out
Sure.
and grab a copy of
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. For sure.
and
I
it's
would
a,
like to eventually translate it into Spanish and maybe make an audio book out of it. I just don't
yeah.
know if I would. I don't know how long it would take me to read the whole book into
You,
a system. I'm so busy. So
well,
I might do AI.
I'll say they have this great thing called AI now. They'll do it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hey, I was going
Yeah.
to ask you. So the Spanish version is going to come with a shoe, right? It's going to come with a.
Chancla. Chancla. Yeah, so
Oh
it's
man.
so it's so funny that you bring that up because I was literally talking to people in a hotel yesterday. I was in New York yesterday. I travel every Wednesday to New York and New Jersey, and I do this little side gig I do for like an insurance guy.
Yep.
And but I'm talking to some people, and there was a Latin person in there, and we're talking about the book. My friend brings up the book, and the Latin guy's wife was like, "Yeah, but us Latins, we have hot tempers, blah blah blah." And I picked up my book. I have it. Yeah, I was like, "Oh yeah, you see this? Well, in the Spanish version, we're gonna put a big chancla in the middle," and she was dying because they don't expect me. Because at this point, she didn't know
Right.
my background. Having a Spanish wife, I lived in the Dominican Republic for 3 years.
Yeah, yeah.
She didn't, so she couldn't believe that this gringo would come out and say that, or even knows about that.
Well, and that's a big part of what you
And
share in
that's
the book.
cultural.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, what you share in the book. And when RGI
yeah,
was, when you were teaching at RGI, that was a big portion of your presentation too, of that cultural awareness of
correct.
knowing some of those nuances so they can act as a connectivity point. And it shows the respect that, hey, you respect their culture.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I
So,
mean, if you remember from RGI, one of the things, and I learned that from there was a guy that worked at the precinct named Richie, and I think I told you, yeah, well, he was part of my presentation, but we went to a house where a guy wouldn't open the door. He just beat his wife to a pulp, and we needed to get entry, but I was ready to kick the again. I was a rookie. I was ready to kick the door in.
right.
I'm thinking, oh, it's go time. I peeked in the door. You know, he had like the door halfway open with the,
Yeah.
and I could see the woman all beat up. So I'm trying to kick the door, and Richie's literally grabs me and pulls me back. And he goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, relax. Let me take care of this." And I was like, "Did you see her face?" He's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, relax. We'll get him out. Don't worry. It's all. He's not hitting her now, right?" I said, okay. And Richie starts talking to this guy about Jesus. Like, man, Jesus loves you. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Who the hell? Because I didn't really know him. It was like the first time I ever worked with the guy. And I heard he was a little crazy, but not in this way. Like,
Right, right. Not a Jesus freak, right? You know?
right, right. So he starts talking to the guy about Jesus, this, and the guy's answering him and listening to him.
You're
And eventually the guy's like, all right, I'm gonna open the door. You're not gonna hit me, are you? Rich is like, no, man, I want to talk to you about Jesus, but I do have to put you in handcuffs just because it's our procedure. I don't want to, but I have no choice. And he's just going on with Jesus. And then later I was really puffing and puffing and pissed off that he pulled me away from trying to kick the door in. And he's like, you get something you want to say to me? Like you look like you're pissed. And I was like, yeah, man, like what the hell was up with that guy? Like, if anybody ever needed an ass kicking, it was this guy. And Richie just looked at me. He's like, yeah, but I don't want to be the guy to have to do that. Let the judge do that when he sentences him. I
right.
don't want to hit this guy and get his blood in my cut. Who the hell knows what this guy has? And I said, well, what the hell? What are you talking to this guy about Jesus for? I'm like, I said, I'm not going to lie to you. I felt a little bit uncomfortable, like a little weird about
You're
that.
trying to convert me, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he goes, listen, dumbass. He goes, first of all, I'm not even Christian. I'm Jewish. He goes, if you would have opened your damn eyes when he opened the door, you would have seen crosses all over the place. And he did. And then I realized, oh shit, yeah. In the
Yeah,
house, he had pictures of Jesus. There were like 5 or 7 crosses all strewn about the apartment. But in like the 2 seconds that this guy opened the door, Richie saw those crosses and knew to talk to this guy about Jesus.
yeah.
So I mean,
He's looking for that connection point.
that's just another thing I put in my little toolbox of ideas, and like it's a concept. Obviously, I'm never going to have the same situation again.
Right,
No one's going to open the door. I'm going to see Jesus crosses all over the place. But but it's the concept of finding that common denominator with somebody you're in conflict with and using that to end things peacefully.
yeah. I mean, those are
You
some
know,
great tips. You've got finding the common denominator, using empathy, which is not the same as sympathy. You don't have to,
right?
agree with why they're
Oh,
upset
absolutely,
and
yeah,
all that, but
right,
just understanding like, hey, I've felt that way too before.
yeah.
Do you have any other tips for folks as far as conflict communications?
Um, Well, definitely, as I was saying, with the tone and the voice, your inflection, right? You always want to try to match and mirror people. And then if they're really above you here, like yelling, you start out loud with them and then you bring it down. And you're going to see they're going to come down with you. It's crazy
Yeah,
how it works, but it
little
does.
NLP, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go.
Right,
That's right. But like again, it's you said it with the sympathy, like, okay, so little Johnny goes and robs a deli with a gun, demands money. Okay, I arrest little Johnny. I don't feel bad for him. Like he needs to go to jail. But let's say I understand little Johnny had a really bad life,
right,
and that's what brought him to do this crime. I detest what he did, the fact that he brought a gun to rob the deli, right? You don't have to have sympathy for little Johnny. He deserves to go to jail,
right,
right? But in your communication with the person, you don't have to hold that over his head the whole time. You don't have to demoralize him when you speak to him for
right.
the whole rest of the night, right? Because that's worse than what he did, right? It really is. When you dehumanize somebody so much, it's worse. It makes you worse. And like Jack always says, when you dehumanize your enemy, it gives you PTSD,
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
him. You get PTSD from that.
Yeah, and
Why
that
did I treat that guy like that? Maybe he had a really bad day. Maybe his mom died last week of a drug overdose. That's the kind of life some of these kids live that are doing some of these crimes we deal with. Horrible, horrible lives. We can't even imagine those lives.
Well, I can remember one of those stories that Jack had told about he was, doing some training with, it may have been New York, the
Hmm.
NYPD, and then there was I think he was a detective or was, at the very least an officer, um, talking, and he said to Jack, "You know what I am? I feel like I'm a garbage man. I pick up
Yep.
human garbage every day.
Yeah.
That's all I do is I collect human garbage and talk about
Yeah.
it's like if that's what you think your job is and you feel that, you're gonna at the very least burn out. If not
Yeah.
you bring that home with you, now you start treating your friends and family like shit. You start looking at people like, they're all liars and they're horrible and it just
Yeah.
I'm just here for the paycheck to take out the trash.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And
you'll
yeah, you're 100% right. And if you remember in the very beginning of RGI, in the beginning, we were getting guys sitting in our class that were on that
Yep.
spectrum,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they would send
That's
them
where
to
they
us,
were.
right?
We were getting cynical people.
Yeah,
We
they would
weren't
send them to
getting,
us.
yeah, it wasn't mandatory. We were getting their problem childs,
Yeah, it's like,
you
hey,
know?
you fix them, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Which, yeah, it's crazy. So we're gonna wrap things up here. I mean,
Yeah.
I could talk to you all day, but we've been rocking and rolling about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Goes fast.
so what are if you had some like tips,
Mhm.
suggestions for people who want to live what I call being a peace walker or the ethical protector life?
Yeah.
What do you think if somebody wanted to do that, how would they go about it?
I, well, first and foremost, I would definitely start some sort of training regimen, whatever you're interested in. And don't go by the latest fad. Oh, well, these guys are the champions, so I must take MMA or
Right.
no, you do a little research, find out what fitting to your body. What would you think you would want to do? Like me and you talk about this. I'm a karate guy, but I took praying mantis kung fu. So did you, right?
Yeah, for a long time.
I, I I used to see this in the movies. I'd be like, yo, I want to do that. I want to be able to trap somebody. So what I do, I went and I found out a great praying mantis instructor.
Yeah,
You just do some sort of training. You don't have to be, doesn't have to be 6 days a week. It could be twice a week.
yeah,
But do something, build that confidence because until you have that confidence, it's hard to live that life
yeah,
because the people you're dealing with sense your lack of confidence. It's like a dog that smells fear. People. That's why this works in human relationships too. Like, you know, if you go to any website or any relationship website and they're talking about male and female, what's the most attractive quality a man can have for a female? Confidence.
confidence. Yeah,
So many of them say that, right? And it's the same thing with the Peace Walker life, I believe, because by having that confidence, you can freely talk to somebody in a totally different way.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, right? So definitely the confidence, definitely really practice on empathy. Next time you talk to someone that you're mad at, think what they might have had happen to them that day. I get into arguments sometimes, even like with my own family. And then I realize, well, you know what? This one does have some doctor's issues going on in her life that I wouldn't want. So maybe that's why they're upset. I can't imagine having that problem today, you know? So empathies, again, it's an ongoing theme throughout the book, of course, because it's that important. The the posturing, body language, right? Try not to do this when you talk to people, right? Make the eye contact. You always give a great lecture on the act of listening.
Yeah.
Active listening, right? I mean, when most people, what do you say? Most people don't listen. They wait to interrupt, right?
I'd like to claim that one, but I stole that one from
Yeah.
Doc Rhino.
Oh, you did? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
from Doc
Well, what's it?
Thomas.
Most people's definition of listening is waiting to interrupt,
Yeah.
right? It's so true. It's so true. I mean, I think I even caught myself doing it to you here once or twice.
Mm.
An
Sa
idea pops in your head. You want to get it out
yeah.
before you forget it, right?
Same
But
thing with me.
try
It's
not, yeah, try not to do that. Listen to people and make eye contact with them. And while they're talking, nod your head, right? Even if you have no interest in what the hell they're saying, active listening is going to solve so many problems. Oh, this guy's really listening to me. And the other thing is reframing
mm,
things with people, right? At work, a work conflict. You don't appreciate the work I do, blah, blah, blah type of instead of that, reframe it into, hey, boss, I want to ask you a question. That project that I did you like the way I do it, or were you not happy with it? You know, let them be the one on the spot answering it. Just reframe it. I mean, it's the same thing,
right.
basically, what's pissing you off, right? It's just one sounds way better if you ask them to, hey, what do you think of this? Right? Yeah. Craig, I can't believe you didn't finish my book yet. Or, Craig, what do you, so far with the pages that you read, how do you think it is so far? Do I sound like an idiot, or you think it sounds way different than, what, you didn't finish the book yet? Are you
Hey,
kidding
you're
me?
interviewing me. You haven't even like finished the book?
So I mean, reframing, that's super important right there. And again, it takes practice. That's why I stopped in so many parts of the book to do these little role plays because you do need to practice this stuff, you
Yeah.
know?
It is. It is an art
Yeah,
and science. I mean, there's a lot of you got to get out there and do it. And I think Doc Thompson said it too. It's like a form, like a martial arts form.
yeah,
There's a structure to it. It's not just a casual
yeah,
conversation.
yeah. And for your older audience, they're going to be very happy if they buy the book. I decided to use larger print. I don't know if you
I
picked up on
appreciated
that.
that, right?
Yeah, a little larger print. And I took out chapters. Did you notice that?
Well, I have the original version.
Oh, you have the misformatted copy.
That's
I want to send you a signed copy. You got to text me your address.
all
I
right,
got to
man.
get you a signed copy. But anyway, and by the way, the good copy, the letters are bigger too.
Okay, well, I'll give
So
you better. Even
yeah.
better.
So, but I took chapters out because there's nothing more that I hate reading a book and you have this goal. All right, I'll get to the end of the chapter before I go to sleep. But then you start nodding off.
Yep.
And it's like you wake up, what did I read? Like, where was I? What the hell did I do? So I took out that stress of having to get to the end of the chapter. And I tried to keep it flowing where it doesn't matter where you stop. Just throw a bookmark in and boom.
Yeah, nice.
So that's
Well,
what I
there you
did a little
have it.
different. Yeah.
So if you want to pick up Artie's book, there it is.
Yeah.
I will put the link in the show notes. And Artie, if somebody wanted to
Hey,
get a hold of you or see what you're up to, do you have any
yeah.
websites or anything that they could latch onto?
Yeah. Well, my karate school is www.sakdojo.com. St. Augustine Karate is the SAK. It's sacdojo.com. And that's my main website.
Okay.
I have an email is artie1970 at gmail.com. Artie1970 at gmail.com.
Well, I'll put that in the show notes too.
Yep.
And so hopefully
All right, man.
anybody out there wants to get better at verbal communications or just kind of check out what Artie's got going on, you have the resources to do that. In the meantime,
When you, yeah,
I appreciate you sharing some time with me, Artie. We
hey,
could
man.
talk for longer, a lot longer.
Appreciate you having me. And when you're going to come down for some of this Florida sunshine?
Next winter.
All right.
All right,
Yeah.
man. Thanks for
All
joining.
right.
Thanks everybody out there for joining Artie and I's conversation. And keep in mind, no matter what you're doing, keep going. We'll see you in the next episode.
Take care, buddy. All right.